I was driving in my car when I heard the news. Another shooting. More innocent people lying dead. Families wailing, frenzied media, the horror of it all. And then the inevitable questions. Who? Why? Why did this happen? Instinctively, my body tensed up. I knew exactly what I would hear next on the radio. The shooter must have had a psychiatric history. He must have been mentally ill. I would hear the assumption that anyone who commits such a heinous crime can't be a member of the human community. Anyone who commits such a crime must certainly be other, mad, insane, crazed, psycho, schizophrenic. I'm a person who's been diagnosed with schizophrenia. I have never murdered anyone. Those of us diagnosed with mental illness are more likely to be the victims of violent crime than the perpetrators of violent crime. But my neighbors don't know that. The teachers at my daughter's school don't know that. Some of my friends don't know it. That's why I knew in my bones this terrible crime would further entrench the public's perception that those of us with psychiatric diagnoses are not members of the human community. I knew no matter what the real facts were, this crime would further cement the stereotype of people like me as dangerous and unpredictable. Of course, the media worked itself into a frenzy. It was as if the whole world started polarizing around the TV talking heads. Some said we needed to ban the sale of automatic weapons. Without a gun, the crime could not have occurred. Others said we needed to arm teachers with weapons to defend themselves and the students. Some said we needed a national register of people who have psychiatric diagnoses so that guns are never sold to us. Some said we needed to ban violent video games. Some said we needed more state hospital beds to warehouse dangerous mental patients in. Some said we needed more laws that would allow society to force us into treatment and to force us to take medications. Some said too many kids are already being drugged with psychiatric medications and that these meds may actually cause some to become violent. Well, as a person who's been diagnosed with mental illness, here's what I have to say. Violence arises from deep woundedness. Violence arises from pain that is unheard, from rejection and isolation, and from abuse and fear. Violence arises from injustice and from not belonging. It is easier to strike out in anger than to experience our pain. All humans know this. None of us is above violence. All of us have smacked a younger sibling or kicked a dog or in some way expressed our hurt in ways that hurt others. The antidote to violence is nonviolence. From my point of view, all of us, not just those of us with diagnoses, must dedicate ourselves to nonviolence at the level of our own bodies, our friends and families, and our communities. Recovery is often a pathway into nonviolence. For many of us, recovery means stopping self-injury and self-inflicted violence. It means learning to be gentler and more respectful of ourselves. Recovery can also mean learning to stop striking out at others, whether that be verbal, emotional, or physical forms of aggression. Learning to manage our anger, daring to work through our emotional pain, learning to stop attributing motives to others, learning when to take a time out and to disengage. These are some of the pathways that lead to a nonviolent, more compassionate recovery. I think as a culture, we must get better at holding people who are hurting so they don't strike out in violence to hurt others. I am reminded of something I once read about elephant behavior. When a member of an elephant herd is distressed, it begins to charge about in anger. The distressed elephant makes every attempt to leave the group, but instead of constraining the individual or abandoning it, the larger herd forms a circle around the distressed animal. The circle both contains and gives way to the angry charge. In time, the distressed individual wears itself out and eventually reclaims its place within the herd. My hope is that maybe we humans, could learn to do this for each other. This is Pat Deegan. Thanks for listening.